Welcome to the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm David Brickley, and on the Business of Social, we examine the digital advertising industry and analyze how brands successfully increase their ad revenue and brand affinity through cutting-edge content on social. In short, we talk to the experts so you're able to keep your thumb on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of social and digital media. I'm super excited about the guest who joins me in the studio today. She's a former on-air host and executive producer that led her to an Emmy back in 2011. She's a contributed writer to publications like Inc., Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, and Forbes, and she currently serves as the founder of BAM Communications, a public relations firm focused on representing the movers, shakers, breakers, and makers in technology. Beck, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I want to start with how you started in the industry, going back to 06 when you started in TV. It was actually NBC back here in San Diego and that whole story. So I want to start there.
It even starts earlier than that because that was when I had just come back to San Diego from doing my MBA in Pittsburgh. And by that point, I had I think 4 or 5 internships at KQED, which was who
so the
produced.
MBA was in journalism or in the...
No. It was, well, and the story to that is I went to UCLA. I did a very fast undergrad, 2 years. I was 19 and I was in that last year at UCLA. And I thought, well, okay, I can graduate in these 2 years.
How'd you do that, by the way? Is that just 28 units a semester?
You had to take a lot of units. I came in with a lot of AP credits. I very strategically picked the courses, the course flow of the courses, because a lot of times you miss something, you miss one of the classes, then you're bumped up, bumped back a lot of times. So no, I had it mapped out, and the economics degree was a shorter one, so I didn't need as many credits. I graduated with 1 extra credit.
Wow.
So by 1. So anyway, the point was I was like, this I could have mapped out, and which means in the summer that I was done after the first year, I thought I can go to MBA school, but that means I have to apply right now.
Yeah.
It was June when I'm thinking this. I'm going, okay, applications are due pretty much October.
And at 19, going for your master's is pretty
Yeah,
pretty unique.
and it was either I'm going to be done.
Yeah.
Well, I was 18 when I was applying, so I'm going to be done with school, or I'm going to be probably one of the youngest graduates ever in one of these top 50 schools or something. So let's give it a shot. And if I get into a place, I'm going to go. And I got into University of Pittsburgh, so I went to Pittsburgh.
That's awesome.
So then by that time, after coming back out of Pittsburgh, I had a bunch of TV internships and producing some stuff too. There was a business show I worked on, production stuff. Then I was like a showrunner for a station that was here, KUSI News, which everyone starts at and ends at. It seems like is of course it starts and ends there. Everyone knows that. And then got hired at NBC to be just the lowly of producer, one of those people that's working at 3 a.m. Writing the scripts and stuff. And then I always knew I wanted to do my own TV show, highlighting and talking with business founders, business executives, like Ralph Rubio. He was one of my first guys on the show. And so created that show, which then the CW and then the Fox affiliate here ran. And at one point I got introduced to a PR executive, a guy who had his own firm here in town.
So back up one second, just because I'm interested. So you created that show, meaning the concept.
Yeah.
You were actually going to host it.
Yeah.
Or, okay.
And I called all the people, I called all the assistants to line up the thing. I did everything.
And then they have to approve budget at that point? Like when you have the concept, like are you producing it and saying just put it on your air type deal? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
So I happily was able to meet a production company here also locally that said, we'll do this.
We'll shoot it,
Yeah, we'll shoot it. And it was great. Their team was fantastic. And with their team of 10 or so, they cut it, they shot it. It was the whole gamut.
And cut it for TV, so Fox is like, let's roll it. Gotcha.
It was just a great thing.
That's
so
awesome.
I got introduced to then this PR guy here in town to be the co-host of one of the shows or one of the seasons. Didn't work out with him, which is a good thing.
Okay.
But while I was putting on one of the shows together in his office, because I would sit in his office, calling the assistants to book these CEOs and stuff, I was around the PR team that he had. And via just osmosis, I thought, oh, I could do this PR thing too. It's one of those stupid things you think of as just the entrepreneur of like, I think I could do this. Yeah, I have no background, but who cares? So you just figure it out. And so then I started BAM, which is now BAM Today. And, you have one client to start with, and then you have two little dorky clients, and then you eventually have four, and then you need to hire people, and here we are today.
So was that, when you started the company BAM, was that something like, let me just try this, and maybe it won't work out, and I'll go do another show? It wasn't really...
Exactly.
Okay.
It was kind of like, oh, I could do this. It's about storytelling. I love storytelling. It's about writing. I love to write. I'm already in media. So why not? Let's give it a whirl.
And then the Emmy in 2011 that had to do with that show.
That
as well?
was one of the it was a show.
That's awesome.
It was
That's
cool.
so cool. I wanted to jump into that story because I think your background in TV and then leading in the PR, I think is super beneficial to this conversation. So you talked about what led you in the PR, but give me your elevator pitch on BAM Communications and what you do with your clients day to day.
Yep. We're storytellers.
Okay.
And we're storytellers mostly for them. So our whole notion is everyone has a story, and it is our job to elevate and showcase that story. Now, some companies, more than others, have better stories than others. So we have to be a bit discriminate, just like our venture capitalist partners that we work with. In whom are we going to work with because the story is so good and juicy? Our favorite situation is when we have a company that is very stealth, hasn't been exposed, is doing something absolutely groundbreaking and possibly world-changing that we then get to collaborate with and expose in the media. So when our clients are working with us, and we like to say they're barrier-breaking brands, we are here fundamentally to showcase that story via getting them mostly in editorial earned content.
Gotcha.
So that's getting in the Bloombergs or the CNBCs and the tech crunches of the world. Number two, that could be in their content. So writing content, placing that content, byline content. Number three, it could be in their social channels. So how we tell that story and just keeping the whole storyline together.
The narrative, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And the narrative tight and consistent is fundamentally what we do.
So with your clients, a lot of these are some of those big tech companies that have injects of Series A funding, things like that. What's usually the core demographic? I'm sure it's different company to company, but are you trying to get in specific publications for more funding potentially to be in that space, or what's your main demo?
That is one of the primary drivers.
Okay.
Usually if you're fundraising, there's the term called just you're always be funded.
Because if you get in front of the 40-year-old mom in Wisconsin, that's not necessarily
if you're a B2C company
Right.
that's trying to target that person. So a lot of the B2B companies we work with, they don't want to be in a Good Housekeeping or a Men's Health or Today's Show because their clients are, let's say, Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 data companies
There's a
that are
select
oriented.
few that you need to get
There's
in front of.
certain niche things. So mostly because we're working with all tech startups, all of the national business tech press, whether it be a TechCrunch to a VentureBeat to a Bloomberg to a CNBC, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they all want to be in those.
Yep.
That's pretty much the foundation.
Yep.
Then there may be some certain nicher outlets that they want to be in, whether it be trade outlets. So let's say they're in ag tech. There's a lot of agricultural publications that fit for that. Or they could be a B2C type of client, which makes sense that they're targeting, okay, women from 18 years old to 35. Okay, what are those outlets that are read by those women in urban cities in the U.S.? Okay, well, there's a handful of those outlets that we should also target.
I'm jumping ahead here, but I've always been interested in the PR world about, I guess, overextending your welcome in a way. I mean, when you have these connections with the Today Show, you have the connection with some of these tech blogs, especially niche, and you represent 9 clients that are trying to get into the same. How do you balance that? Because I'm sure if someone does you a favor one time, maybe you have to kind of let it chill there for a while.
This is why PR is one of the most stressful jobs in America.
I mean, the more clients you get, the harder.
On that list of what are the most stressful jobs, construction work or police. PR is on there. And you go, what the hell? We're not, and it's one of the gals in our office likes to say it's PR, not ER. We are not dealing with people possibly dying on tables and such that are critical things. But
it's 24/7 too.
24/7, and you're dealing with, and the media is 24/7, but you are dealing with pleasing the client and pleasing the press and being the bridge between those.
Yeah.
And the press owe you nothing. So the only way
What's
to
in
get
it for
their
me,
trust,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
The only way to get their trust is you need to be the friend of them, help them get their sources, help them produce the story, and not always be just funneling and pushing your clients for obviously your benefit. They know what the deal is.
Exactly.
And this is why there's a lot of tension between these two entities, the publicist versus the journalist, because bad publicists will just spray you forever with all their crap clients, let's say, if you're dealing with such a company.
Yep.
And then they're going to ignore you and say, you're not giving me anything of value.
I think that's interesting. One thing that I think there's a common misconception that I'm sure you hear, and you probably have a good take on this, is the difference between PR and advertising.
Oh, yes.
And even marketing. There's 3 pillars there, right? That I think everybody just kind of jumbles up.
Yeah.
But you being in the space, I think your take on this would be interesting to explain that difference between PR and advertising.
So PR typically, and we should clarify this too, public relations can mean many, many, many different things of all the publics you are speaking to. Maybe that's your board. Maybe that's your shareholders. It could be your employees, your internal communications.
Memos, right?
It can be influencers in Washington and such. Maybe it's government affair type of thing. So there can be all types of relations that you have to manage. So the umbrella of public relations is quite large. Typically what people think of is more what's really media relations, which is, how do you deal with the press? How do you get in the press and so forth? So we say we're a PR firm, but really it's a communications firm or media relations of what we do. So if you're in media relations, and what is the value then of the articles and the news pieces you get versus advertising, it's long been known, and there's many different people who debate this, but that editorial earned content is far more valuable and credible than anything you could buy for an ad, because the consumer is savvy enough to know, that's a paid spot, and that's why you have to disclose it in magazines. This is an advertisement, this is advertisement, because you could say whatever you want in an advertisement. You can write a check right now to the Wall Street Journal, and you could be in that paper on Monday.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's going to be a big check, but absolutely. Yep. You want to get a whole story feature that's about your company and all the cool stuff you're doing? Okay, that's much harder.
Yeah.
And that's going to be much more validating. Yes.
So PR, the way I see it, and I was ignorant of this at one point too, is the PR standpoint is the earned media or coming from credible sources talking about your brand in a somewhat organic way, right?
Correct.
Advertising is you're literally paying to say the iHeartRadio Awards are on TBS on March 11th. X.
Pay for play.
You pay for play.
Yep.
So I want to inject social media into this because I'm sure it's changed your world dramatically, especially in the last 5 years. So if you don't mind talking about the transition of maybe how you used to work the first year you started BAM Communications and then where we are today in 2018, we saw everything that happened with the election and Facebook and everything like that. But in your industry specifically, how have you kind of managed that?
Depends what space the client is in. If they're in something super technical, B2B, they don't need to be on Instagram necessarily, or they don't need to have a super active Facebook. Very different for B2C. But what we do know at this point is you cannot ignore your social channels. Right. It is another outlet that you control. Yep. So it's owned content that you can control on that. And you should leverage it to the best of your ability when you have a great piece of earned content come out.
Right.
So that should be shared. That should be exposed. We have a technology that lets us see what is the social amplification of every piece of coverage we get. So now we get to see, how is it shared? Where does it go? Because it might be, let's say, a smaller publication or a smaller media piece, but then actually on the social channels, it's robustly shared within your communities and such. So the long and short of it is you cannot ignore all the social channels. Why would you also, given that it's a free
billboard.
way, a billboard for you to do it. You just need to do it well, and you need to make it sure it's consistent and appropriate for your business.
I want to dig into the data part of it because I think old school PR is, if you get into a magazine, earned media wise, it's circulation times 3.
Yeah,
because if I get the magazine, I'm going to share it with my girlfriend and share it with my friend, which is, and listen, we talked before the show, Nielsen ratings isn't really an exact science. There's really no black and white as we stand here today. But what data tools have you used to show the client, here's the value of that Forbes article, or here's the value of that influencer talking about your brand?
So there are now, and there's a variety of them, tools and robust data analytic tools that any firm can buy, any company can buy, usually for a pretty penny, truly, but that can show you as much as feasible right now online what a piece of coverage does, what the influencers are saying, and so forth. So we use one that we white label. It's called TrendKite. It's very popular. It's expensive though. So is one of our clients necessarily going to buy that for $20,000 to have a year-long subscription? Probably not. So if it's something that we can offer our clients, which we do, then that's a value to them. But what it allows you to see is, how is your share of voice? How are your press pieces stacking up compared to competitors? What is the social amplification? So where is it going, this piece of coverage and such? Of all the placements you got, what was the most driving to your website? Where did people click?
Interesting.
Where did it go? However, that all being said, do we ever fully know the extent
Clear
of which?
ROI? No.
No, you just don't.
Yeah.
This is the oldest problem in advertising and marketing today, because we cannot at this point track where did the influence of those eyeballs on the Coca-Cola billboard in the stadium that you
Exactly.
saw
Yep.
go. Who knows? We do not know.
And I say that all the time. You have a billboard on the 405 freeway next
Mm-hmm.
to LAX, and they say, 1.3 million people drive by this billboard.
Yeah.
But how many people actually see it? How many people write down the phone number to the law firm? And then
Yes.
how many people actually call because they saw the bill? And all you can really do now is, hey, so how'd you hear about us?
And the thing is, too, awareness, yes, is
Yep.
the first step. But awareness does not necessarily
Equate to-
mean anything
Yeah.
else. So, for example, obviously I'm aware of Pepsi. Do I drink Pepsi? No. No, I don't. I'm aware of ESPN. Do I listen to ESPN,
Yeah.
watch ESPN? No, I do not.
Yep.
So awareness is just the first little step in order for a whole conversion to, let's say, happen.
I think one thing we saw in the last year was the Wendy's tweet. So we
Yeah.
remember Carter Wilkerson. He said, hey, Wendy's, how many retweets do I need to get free chicken nuggets for a year? And a great social media report.
They ace it.
They do it. Do well. But good for them for replying them and saying 18 million. If you get 18 million retweets, we're going to give it to you. And of course, he ends up only getting 6 million.
Yeah.
But it was the number one retweeted tweet in Twitter history. It beat Ellen, the selfie, I think a lot of people remember
Yeah.
from the Oscars or
Oscars.
Emmys. That's an interesting thing there too, though, because you're talking about it since Twitter's history from 2006. We're talking about 12 years. No tweet has ever been shared more than this tweet. For Wendy's, they got an amazing amount of press. Did they sell more hamburgers that quarter is the question. And maybe I haven't looked into it. Maybe
We'd
they
have
did.
to look into it.
But that's something where potentially they didn't. But how amazing is that for the brand, and how much does that help? And that's the age-old question I think you talk about.
That is the oldest question we have here. It is.
Yeah.
And we may never know. The only way we would know, I think, is if there's some radical technology, which would be very scary, to track inside your brain
Yeah, exactly.
what you're thinking of, what makes you go and buy some type of thing. Because just like in advertising where they talk about it's multiple exposures, it typically is before you then take an action.
Yep.
Sometimes not. Sometimes you click it right away.
You
You
need a
buy
couple
it.
touches in.
But sometimes there is. So it's just it's an art still.
I do think we're getting closer, though, because when it comes to, even even advertisement, you
Oh,
can
yeah.
actually target the 18 to 35-year-old in Wisconsin. You can see how many clicks are going to your website. Facebook actually has an algorithm that will only charge you based on checkouts or based on traffic.
It's true.
So we're getting closer there, because now we used to have that magazine or that newspaper and we're hoping it works. But now you're actually going to be able to track people, where they're clicking and where they're going, especially with their mobile devices. So.
And Facebook is killing it on that
Yeah.
in terms of their revenue. So that's very smart for them to do such a process
Yes.
of the click to your cart in order for you to be charged.
So as
Because
we
impression, no one cares about that. No one cares about that at this
know.
point. No CMO, no
another
marketers like
great
impression. We don't care.
Another great number is potential reach.
Oh, what is that?
That's billions.
Potential. Yeah,
usually.
it's billions.
Yeah.
It's the whole planet.
Yeah.
Okay.
More than the planet usually. But as we dig in here, how can brands, in your opinion, this is kind of overall, and this is a loaded question, I know, but how can they use social media to, increase their PR efforts or their brand awareness
yes.
the right way, in your opinion?
So the number one thing, and this is what we grill our clients on, or we're doing the social, so we're helping them with this,
Right.
is when you do get that earned piece, that you share it and you leverage it to the best of your ability on all your platforms. If you look at Facebook, you see a lot of brands do this. They don't say, oh, just buy our thing. They put where the press has said, this is the best new gadget of 2018.
'Cause that builds the credibility
These
we're
are the
talking about.
softest sheets ever from Elle magazine. Whatever it is. Because that's credibility and that's
Yep.
validation. And that is what the media still functions as, is a validation tool and a signal to the consumer. So that's the number one thing, is use those earned pieces. Don't let them slide into the abyss of just never being mentioned, because you should be using that not only in your advertising, but just generally when you get the piece. Get that out there. And then secondly, you could put it in your sales decks or whatever else is helpful on your website and such. But that's the number one thing, is like, do not cut yourself off of getting a great piece of coverage and then not leveraging it immediately and continuously on your platforms.
And do you recommend boosting those posts and putting paid behind it anytime you get that earned media? Because the more eyeballs that see that credibility, it will help your brand? Okay.
Yes. Typically, that's going to be a yes.
Interesting.
That's the number one thing.
So how big, in your opinion, are influencers? Maybe not specifically in your space, but we've seen this. I mean, when I was a kid, it was Michael Jordan, and I wanted my mom to buy me Wheaties and buy me Hanes underwear and everything that he really said, I like this or this is my brand. But now with social media, there's these tech bloggers, there's these mommy bloggers, if you will, that can really take your product to the next level by just mentioning it. And I'm wondering if you've dealt with or how you've brought in social media influencers to extend that brand awareness or message.
So the whole influencer space is in a little bit of an upheaval, I think, currently, because there is so much supply of these individuals. It's because anybody can do it if you get to a good enough mark.
Yep.
Also, though, with the whole, and there was a great article in the New York Times about this, an investigative piece about paid or bot followers. And even bots that
we talked about this on the show.
Are mimicking real actual profiles. So they're calling it social theft because your image, your dog's face, and so forth are being stolen to look real and then be shown as following certain brands and stuff. So the space is not highly regulated, number one. And number two, there's just such a volume. So it's hard to distinguish and discern among the credible ones who could actually do something for your brand, and then the ones that are just fluff and fodder and really not real.
Yeah.
So one thing I always look at is, okay, you have 50,000 followers on your Instagram. Great. Okay. Of those, when you posted something, did you get 100 comments? Did you get a few hundred? Or did you get 2?
Yep.
Because then that seems like a red flag there.
And there's a problem even with that because with the bots can leave fake comments. And
then now we have that problem.
That's a problem too, right?
That's a problem too.
And I think, so with your clients in terms of ROI, because I think influencer, you made a great point, we don't know enough about it, but it's a sexy new thing, especially like 6 months ago or a year ago, at least in our space when it comes to entertainment and sports. Everybody wants the Kendall Jenner to share something, and
that's $1 million going to cost you that.
That's going to be $1 million. But I mean, there's people that have those 200,000 followers that people want to be a part of. But a lot of times we've heard from our clients too, there's no justification or ROI. They just want to play in the space.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you navigate that, because I'm sure a lot of your clients say, well, let's do this on Snapchat, and you're like, whoa. We can do that, but it's not really going to do what your end goal is.
Yeah. We usually take it as it's a nice to have thing. If you have some extra budget you can dedicate to this and we want to experiment in that space, great.
Yep.
Should your entire marketing or majority budget be spent on just influencers? Probably risque. Just because of that supply and just the craziness of the ecosystem of influencers. So we like to say, let's dedicate some to kind of experimenting. Some hopefully will be wonderful and and it really do have those real followers and know their niche audience that could actually move your product, let's say. And then some are probably going to be a dud. And if you're okay with that, then okay. If you're not, if you're looking for a hit rate of like, we're going to do this 100 influencers and 100 out of 100 are going to be, able to move X amount of product or whatever. No, those are unrealistic expectations.
So do you currently even recommend that with your current clients? I mean, you're more in the tech.
Not for the B2B ones. They're not so much there. There's other influencers, let's say some bloggers and such, that might be, of course, influential, but they're not like sitting back going, well, pay me $5,000 and I'll talk about your sexy SaaS platform.
Is there any, when you talk about trying to get in front of a niche market like a VC, is there any, I guess, basis behind, these people are on Facebook, they are on Instagram. Let's say they follow Tim Ferriss because he's up in San Francisco and he talks to the business people. Would it then be valuable, or does it earn that credibility if he somehow can talk about that? Or maybe that's do you try to get stuff in front of certain people that may share it organically or have that earned media value? Okay.
Yes. That's always the best if it could be an organic thing, because a lot of times with any influencers or even celebrities, they just love something. Yeah. And they're just excited about it and they will share
Talk
that.
About it.
That's the cool thing. The problem then on the other side is when we know you've been paid to disclose this, and now the FCC is involved with you needing to mention that this is a paid thing. They crack down on the Kardashians were their number one target, because do you really love that mascara,
paid $1
or
million
are you
for it,
getting
yeah.
paid
Yeah.
how much million to really say that? And the consumer gets pissed, I think, with that. So if you can get the organic stuff, if you have a tight list of real stuff that you could, or tight list of those influencers where you could drop it and see who really takes to it, okay, great. Maybe you can get something organic. That's going to cost you pretty much nothing. So why not start with that?
So in a situation where let's say you're doing PR for a product like Mophie, which is a iPhone charger case or something like that, and you wanted to get in with the influencers, like have you ever dealt with that before, where you're actually trying to send product and hoping they share? Because again, it's that weird gray area where you can't tell them they have to post, but you're hoping that they do this favor by you doing that favor. So how do you navigate those relationships?
We usually don't do that.
Yeah.
Because influencers' only stream of revenue practically is being an influencer at this point. So they may come back and go like, I love this. Oh, well, pay me the 5,000, 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing movies or they're not doing a real job. A lot of times this is their one thing. Although some, they're photographers or they're fitness people or whatever, but
yeah,
you're going to probably get a response of, yeah, I love it, but here's the cost to kind of do that. So influencers are less, I think, influential in that space in terms of the organic play. More important, you can go with the actual media outlets. So it is that they know they're getting pitched all the time, but they are not incentivized in any way to talk about something unless they love it. Unless it works for what they're working on. It's their focus. It's their audience. They love it. They think it's the best. Okay, then that's great. And they weren't paid to do that. That's still the best thing. So if I had a product, if I had a little product, and we don't usually have like little techie gadget products, but let's just say, theoretically, I wouldn't touch the influencers off the bat. I would go, what are the outlets in which this product could be showcased in? Great. Let's send a really cool, compelling, gift boxed type of piece, or let's set up a bunch
columnists at Forbes
to the columnist or the person we're trying to reach, although some of them can be a little bit, they don't like that. Or let's line up some meetings, or let's have an event in which we could put it physically in their hand.
That's interesting. Okay.
Great. They could take it or not, and then they're going to be there and use it. So it's like, it's a soft pitch. It's not like, oh my gosh, you want to write about this, but hey, you're at our party. Here's our little swag.
That's interesting.
Take it home. Oh, you like it? Oh, you want some images now? Okay.
So in your opinion, because I think it's interesting to get kind of more of an outsider take, because I'm like in the middle of sports entertainment and social every single day. But from your standpoint, dealing in a somewhat different industry, what is your overall feeling on influencers and where we are 5 years from now? I don't think they're going away. But
I'm bearish.
Interesting.
I'm bearish.
There's a lot of people that feel the same way.
Yes. Yeah. The reason is because there is so much BS out there. So what do we usually see? Like in the crypto space right now, you see a big balloon. Yeah. You see all this interest, and then it'll morph back into what's realistic. I think the same will happen with influencers. There's a lot of people who want to get in the game, but then really it's going to shrivel to more its true market.
Right.
Instead of an explosive market, which is a lot of fodder.
And before we mentioned the Michael Jordan example, right now getting The Rock or Kevin Hart or Snoop Dogg to talk about your product is still super valuable.
We just had Snoop Dogg on a thing last night, with our client.
So that's something that has always worked, I think, and that's more not so much influencers and hoping they share, but actually you're paying a celebrity to endorse your product, which is different. But they're just
they are the original influencers.
Exactly.
This is like this influencer thing is just this new term.
But I
think
what
Instagram.
changed that is the only way you can get the word out about Wheaties or Gatorade through Michael Jordan was to have a linear commercial back in the day.
True.
Now with social media, if Stephanie, the mommy blogger, has that same, she probably has more reach than
she might.
Bravo or HLN or these different TV networks. So there's certain, Fox Sports 1 has a television show that gets 100,000 viewers per show. Well, there's people on Instagram that can get millions of impressions and views. So that was that weird thing that happened a few years ago where, wait a second, why don't we just go to Stephanie, the mommy blogger, who gets more reach than that of Bravo Television for a commercial. But to your point, I think it's at least going to go through an evolution and transition with the bots and try to crack down on that. And I think people are getting smart to it. It all seemed organic and fun in the beginning, but now it's starting to feel a little salesy and a little much.
Yeah, it's like crypto.
Yeah,
exactly. The real stuff will shake out.
Yeah, I think it always goes through that transition. So earned media value. This is something that our company deals a lot with. And I think, working with the award shows, we had a situation where Lady Gaga organically tweeted, watching this show, I love it. This is so amazing. again,
Cha-ching.
yes, cha-ching. However, in an analytical deck to talk about how the event went afterwards, in your opinion, just how do you explain that? Because again, we're still in a situation where we don't know how many people saw that tweet. And I do it all the time. I'm a big basketball fan. And I'm on the couch and I'm scrolling through Instagram and there'll be a highlight of LeBron dunking. And I go, it's Tuesday. Oh yeah, it's NBA on TNT, and I flip the television on. But you can't track that. And maybe
this is the ultimate end-all problem.
Okay.
We have no solution for this.
Yep.
And anyone who's like, we do, no, BS. Because we are not inside the minds of every human and understanding their psyche and their buying decision.
With your
we
clients,
just are not.
I think you almost have to understand the value of PR or you don't. And there's no way, because I mean, if someone doesn't understand it, I just find it difficult for you to be like, no, here's.
We don't deal with that.
Okay.
Because if we're trying to convince on a consistent base, no, that's a bad client for us, frankly.
Okay.
Our clients are ones who come to us saying, we need PR. We understand it, or we think we understand it. Here's why we believe we need it. What can you do for us? We don't go after people who are going, oh no, we never have done PR. Oh, we hate PR. Oh, we think it's valueless, and we're trying to like chase them and convince them. We don't even touch that.
But do you need to attach a dollar value? There's a lot of people all about ROI. So Lady Gaga, it would cost you $900,000 for her to tweet organically about you, and we found a way for her to do it just because. Is that a number you put on that report at the end of the month and say, we're doing our job? From a dollars and cents standpoint.
You could use that because that is a simple one-time transaction. You're not counting what happened from that, but you have bought that. Okay. However,
is that the number one thing to use though, or is it? You
can use that, but the other problem of that is we now know, or we're assuming that was completely organic versus a paid thing if it wasn't disclosed paid. So there's usually more value associated with that. How much? Here's the other side of the coin of the discussion
2X,
of like,
3X?
well, 2X, 3X, 10X. Who knows? The problem is, but at least you could say, hey, client, you know what? Had paid for that, we know her price. We know her pricing list. Here's what it'd have been. And so at least use that.
Do you do that at the publication level too, like Forbes, in order
Typically
to get?
Not.
Okay.
We don't have clients that are like asking for that. And I think if you're dealing with clients that are getting that nitty gritty with, well, what was the cost of it? Ooh, that's probably maybe not.
I think in our industry, I think it's like, great, Lady Gaga tweeted about us, but what does that mean? And I think there could be just a matter of what story you're going to tell based on what that actually means. And I think we run into that, but it's like, we do events where, we'll have Shaq come into one of our activations or our booth and hey, let me get that, man. That's dope. I want to tweet that. Well, that's incredible. But, and then if the next year the client's like, yeah, we just don't know if we have budget for the activation this year. I'm just like, it's unbelievable. But that's the problem I think a lot of people have.
What I will say though, is when you have a volume of things to show to a client, when we have 30 press placements over the course of an engagement with them,
you have to put a round number on it, right?
Well, now we're not nitpicking one thing. They're not going to say like, well, Lady Gaga was only this effective. It's because, well, let's look at the aggregate of it, because branding is also an aggregate artist game in a sense. It's not usually just a one-time thing that triggers the consumer to act in such a way.
Yep.
It is an aggregate play. So you could hopefully stand to the body of your work and point to the body and say, well, this mass of content coverage, etc., has produced and put you this far ahead from, let's say, these 5 competitors that you have. So we look at much more on the aggregate sense.
That's interesting.
Because it's not a one-hit wonder type of thing.
The reason I asked that question, and I may be going down a rabbit hole, but we work so much in the event space, Super Bowl, iHeartRadio Awards, like these different things that it's like, okay, how do we do? And now it's over. So here, instead of like a long-term play. So I think it's like, how do we activate it? How do we capitalize on the moment? And what did that mean? And I think that's the question. Anybody that works in kind of the event or sports where it's a big game. Yeah.
That's a hard time. Yep.
Yeah. So you have to do the aggregate. So I want to get your thoughts just overall on the industry as a whole about PR blunders. We see you talked about Pepsi.
So many.
We talked about
There's
Pepsi,
so many.
but Kendall Jenner's Pepsi ad went over very, very poorly.
We were just talking about that actually. Yeah. We were talking about it on the car right up here.
United Airlines and removing the passenger. So I'm sure you've dealt with crisis or at least risk management when it's come to your clients. And what's your overall philosophy when you have to deal with situations like that?
First thing is, especially for these tech companies, a crisis can happen any time. Oh, we only have 5 employees. We don't care. Oh, we only have 50 employees. We don't care, because anything can be blown up, especially right now. There's a lot of naysayers of Silicon Valley and such. Silicon Valley is not this lovely castle in the sky type of thing glowing. No, a lot of people are poking holes through all that stuff. So you are never too small to have a plan in place in case an employee goes off the rails, or in case there's something with the co-founder, or in case you're getting something involved with the investor who happens to there's so many cases. So just always, it doesn't matter your size or the amount of funding or your amount of revenue or whatever, have a plan in place. That's the best thing. That's the best thing.
And you mentioned employees. You mean employees just getting fired and then going off the rails saying
we see this
terrible.
All the time.
Interesting.
Oh, I was sexually harassed. Oh, I was unfairly paid.
Well, look at Uber.
Microsoft is dealing with a class action suit for, I read it today, 8,416 women trying to get 20-something 1 million for all the, huge PR issue. 8,000 people. I mean, that just how to organize that mass of people. I'm like, wow. I mean, what did that take? That's phenomenal. But now that's a huge crisis for them.
And if you're met with that challenge, it might be like, we're probably gonna. Good luck. That's tough. That's the
hugely,
toughest.
That's the worst. Obviously, most companies are not Microsoft level, but the point is, you can always have a problem. You can always have a problem. So just have a plan that's ready to go. So there's no flailing. There's no...
So you get down to the granular level of if an employee leaves the company and says that the company steals IP and they're terrible people, here's the PR plan that we then enact if that happens.
Usually it's a bit broader because there's so many implications of what could possibly happen, that it's more of a, here are the steps of the crisis that we are going to follow and in what time frame. So it's very clear that if this happens, here in the next 72 hours is what's going to happen. Because quickness pays. You need to be
Let's use House of Cards and Netflix as an example. So the Kevin Spacey news comes out. And pretty quickly they say that this is their last season, was the first thing they said. But anybody that knew House of Cards knew that was already their last season. But I think it was kind of a smart PR thing because people around the water cooler were like, they made this season the last one. Then it went to, we're suspending Kevin Spacey. Then it went to, he's off the show. But what is your first course of action? I know this is like a loaded question, but when something bad happens with your brand, do you attack it and answer it right away? Is that the number one philosophy? Do you stay away for a little bit? Do you try to make a new story to combat the bad story? What's your philosophy?
There's so many people who botch this, and I would say number one thing is you address it.
Address it immediately.
Address it immediately. We are aware of the situation involving X. We are working on the solution. We are looking into it, etc. Not addressing it creates speculation hugely, because now people are going to fill in the gaps. And they're going to also talk about like, oh, they're not acting on this. They're not doing this. So you need to just raise the flag to say, we are aware. Yes. We are working on it. And here, if there's a certain time frame tied to it, this is when we will respond. Then you can get into the response once you have aggregated the information pertaining to the situation. Because usually the reason companies hold off in saying anything is because they're going, well, we don't know all the information. We don't know all the information. But meanwhile, everyone else is trying to fill in your information.
So say you
and
don't
now
know the
they're
information.
speculating, and now there's a witch hunt going, and now all this thing. So placate that by saying, we are aware and we are aggregating the information, the accusations, the da-da-da-da-da. That's the best way to just say, keep yourself accountable and honest with, we are aware and we're working on it. And then you can come out with the full statement once you know all the key elements. Ignoring is the worst thing. The worst thing. Because people will fill in the gaps. And now in today's social media world, they will immediately fill in the gaps. Within less, hours. This is what we see all the time. With the feedback loop now is tremendous. You don't have a news cycle of a day. You have literally minutes.
It is true. And what's your first platform to go to in those situations?
Depends on the client. Depends on the audience. If they're active on Twitter, it could be on Twitter. Maybe it's something more, maybe you need to email people because it could be maybe an internal problem that's brewing. And you need to think of your internal audiences. Maybe your investors, your employees, something like that. It does depend. But in that PR plan, you will have a delineation of, here are the 6 audiences we need to communicate, and in which way. Which platform. What's
your philosophy on continuing business as usual in terms of, if a big crisis like that happens and you come out and say, we're looking into it, do you also recommend you need to stop marketing? You need to stop doing some of those rollouts because you need to focus on this. And I think what happens is if Jeremy Piven in his situation gets accused of sexual assault, whether he's guilty or not, he says, I come out, I did not do it. Should he really be on Ellen the next day talking about his new movie? Probably not. So I think, do you shut down situational?
It is situational, because there's going to be times where it's not appropriate. Absolutely not. But if you're Procter & Gamble, you got to keep running on all those products. So it really depends. It really depends. Usually when you see an individual being accused, they do get rid of, or frankly, they're disinvited. The producers come and say, like, you're not going to be on this. We're not going to have you. We're going to ditch you on this, this, and this. Much better if you proactively come out and say, you know what, for the next 2 weeks, I've decided to not be on any shows or engagements. Because now you at least control that message.
Yeah.
Even if they were going to call you up in 2 minutes and say, hey, guess what? You're not getting booked. But at least you can come out with that and save a little face with that.
And I know this is, again, I know you don't know PR for individuals in terms of like Hollywood, but like I'm just thinking like the Louis C.K. situation.
Yeah.
He's not Harvey Weinstein. He did some despicable things, but he obviously wasn't accused of actual sexual assault. It was just very inappropriate behavior. In my opinion, you need to just go away for a while. 1 or 2 years, 3 years potentially, where nobody just hears from you. Then maybe there's a potential possibility. Or maybe do you think someone like that, his career's over and he did never come back from it?
I don't think careers can necessarily be ended. Again, it's the severity, of course.
Unless you're Harvey Weinstein, I think he's...
Yeah, that's pretty done. That's pretty done. People love comebacks, though. We all make mistakes
Michael
and
Vick.
such. Apologies can be made and people forget. That's the other aspect. So take some time away, depending on the severity, and then you can re-enter and do something else. Monica Lewinsky did this great. She did a TED talk about just, coming back from that, that horrible thing, being the intern that got hit on by the president, all that.
Right.
But yeah, you can come back, but you need to be appropriate with the time in which to come back.
So personal brands, like when something happens, you make your statement and then you need to go into a corner for a while. And
Take some time.
Yeah.
Look at Martha Stewart.
Yeah, it's true too.
Talking about Snoop Dogg. There you go.
That's
See
really,
their butts.
Really good example. So PR releases in the digital age, again, going back kind of old school PR, the PR releases were a big part of PR to get that positive brand awareness, but it really was the email or the letter back in the day to kind of launch that new brand or talk about that new celebrity endorsement. With this new digital space now in social, how has that changed in terms of getting the word out there? Because I'm assuming some things just need a 140-character tweet rather than sending an email out to your entire database.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very much so. So sometimes you don't need a press release. It's just, I relate to it as, it's like the prescription the doctor fills out. That little piece of paper, it's kind of frivolous in a way, but it gets you something. All a press release is a complete compilation of all the details pertaining to a certain thing with some quotes and a format and a thing like that. It's formal. It's formal. But people who expect for anything to happen because you release it on the web and you're going to wait and get all this media coverage. No, absolutely not. There are so many press releases put on these distribution sites. It's just an SEO play. That's just an SEO. Get some links back. You'll be on Yahoo Finance or whatever. But that's all it is. It's just a document with all the relative details. What you really need to do is you need to have your press team, your PR team, be pitching the story to get the actual organic earned content or coverage. That's it. Or your Google, you just post something on your blog and everyone and their mother covers you because there are reporters at certain outlets that's only job is to follow alphabet. That's it.
Yeah.
But those are for the few.
So, but how has that changed since 2006? Because I'm assuming that used to be more of your day-to-day and what you guys did, and now it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you never, and this still happens, but you would never just BCC an email, put all your press contacts in there with the copy and paste of a press release. Why would you ever do that? That is not, no. You should be fired if you're at a firm doing that, because that's just the pray and spray type of thing. That's not effective. You want to get a piece of coverage, you're going to individually contact your media contacts, plate up a perfect story of a perfect angle for them that pertains to their audience, and do it that way.
And is that all with your team? Is it very one-to-one?
It is.
And
Absolutely.
that's changed a little bit too, because I think it really what used to be that spraying, not everybody obviously, but
Yeah.
hey, send it out to these 20 media outlets. Hey, I have a great story for you. But now I'm seeing it's probably those relationship based.
Oh, it's all relationship
like,
based.
hey, what's going on? I hope the kids are going well. I thought you guys might like this
Exactly.
story. Here's a quick synopsis.
Exactly. This is why we do events with them. We have dinners with them. We take them out karaoke. We go to drinks. They're people.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like you were talking with another human. So it pays to know and have the relationship with them. Because then also if you have a relationship, you can call in that favor every once in a while. You could say, hey, I know this isn't exactly what you would do, but could you send it to so-and-so who I don't
Interesting.
know who might be able to write about it? Because you're going to need those favors in PR. But those favors are not going to be granted if you have no relationship.
Yeah.
You need to have the relationship. So being in San Francisco, being in New York, being in the major metropolitans where the media lives is important so that you can see them face to face. Face to face is always the best.
Yeah, and I think that's for any business. I mean, it's really all about the relationships, right? So, I mean, if you're able to make those relationships with those media outlets, they're going to trust you and know. And I think if something isn't valuable and you know it's all one-sided, like I need to get this in, then that's when you say, I'm just not even going to waste that touch on that type of moment.
The thing is, I mean, despite all the data and all the analytics and all the things that are out there, business is about relationships.
Yeah.
Humans are still building
And I think a lot of
businesses.
people forget that.
They do.
Yeah,
They
they
do.
don't even know that,
So
right?
we need to remember, real people, humans, work in businesses. Businesses are still about, and probably for a very long time, will be about relationships.
And they're busy and they just got chewed up by their boss and things happen.
We're dealing with humans here.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. And I don't really care what space your business is in. If it's super B2B, you are still selling ultimately to a human. You are.
Yeah.
There's that decision maker or that contract or that media person. It's still a human. So
Yeah.
you need to have a relationship until we're selling, bots are selling or pitching bots, which I think we're a very long way from.
Yeah.
Business is about relationships.
So where do we?
And that's how business gets done.
Yeah, where do we go from here? So we look 5-10 years down the road. I mean, in my opinion, I think when you look at voice, you look at Alexa, and you look at what Facebook and Instagram's doing, and everybody's on their phone. I mean, everybody.
Oh yeah, of course.
And
for now,
our attention spans are getting shorter. So the reason I talked about press releases is if you're trying to get in front of a certain market, I think even to a certain point, you look at a Forbes or an Inc., which has been so fruitful, I'm sure, for your clients in the past. How many people are reading that 19-paragraph article about that, and how can it be more bite-sized? I even think for me now, when I watch a video, I'm constantly tapping it to see how much is left of the video. So I think the 15-second videos are now part of like how to get in front of people. So where do you think in PR specifically and getting brand awareness out there, where do you think we're going with this?
I think there is still a slight backlash that is brewing.
Okay.
That is going towards more longer form. That is going for the in-depth.
It seems like the pendulum
Especially in
always
journalism.
swings back and forth. Yeah.
It's always swinging.
Yep.
It's always swinging. And I definitely feel, especially in journalism right now, that is having a huge crescendo of a moment because of the Trump stuff and everything and fake news. You're seeing those long form articles, and there's apps and such that are now the long form. And
true.
like you listen to a Tim Ferriss podcast, that thing's an hour and 40 minutes. So I think there's a pendulum swim to more detail and getting more in depth with stuff. I think there will always be the 10-second little blips in the videos and things like that and the little bite-sized stuff. But for the consumer that wants the in-depth and wants to really understand something, there is going to be a space for the long form. I think it's just a pendulum that's always swinging. Maybe the pendulum gets kicked a little bit more, so we're going to see bigger swings. But that's just the nature of where we're in.
The best example that I think is back like when I graduated or when I was in college, like what was it, 06 to 09-ish. Everybody, when they would go on a trip, spring break, they would upload their entire photo album to Facebook, hundreds of photos, and make that publicly available to anybody and everybody. Then we went to Snapchat where everything gets deleted after 24 hours. So talk about pendulum. Like I'm going to share with you my entire life, and now I'm only
a little bit.
And now I'm only going to show you. You can't even see it after 24 hours. Then it's gone forever. So from a social media standpoint, we've seen that pendulum, and how we've gone from let me share a whole paragraph of how my day's going to now let me share a small sentence. Yeah. When it comes to, I think, overall businesses and you as a consultant, if you were to come in and say, you're a small business, you don't do anything when it comes to PR, what's the first step you think people can take before maybe they enter a relationship with a BAM Communications or spend 5, 10, 20 grand a month? What do you think is the one thing that businesses or brands are doing wrong and need to think about today when it comes to their brand?
So we talk about this at these PR boot camps that we lead for smaller companies that are, of course, not going to pay us anytime soon necessarily for this. And so what I tell folks, whether they're the head of marketing or it's even the founder themselves, the business owner, is, okay, you can start making your own relationships right now. And so what does that look like in terms of that? Well, you don't go up to someone and say, oh my gosh, you want to write a whole story about me? No, if you don't know them, that you seem like a weirdo. And that's not going to be well taken. So start slowly. Pick out 20 outlets, maybe it's 10, that are the ones you want to be in.
Your influence in your industry.
Then go, who writes for those? Who are the people there? Email such people. Maybe you're in New York City. Great. Go meet them for coffee. Hey, I'm in the space. You're not asking for something to write about me right now and how great we are. Don't make the ask right off the bat.
Yeah.
You don't know these people. That's not going to go over well typically, unless you were so amazing and there was something to talk about. But typically spend the 6 months to a year building your own relationship with all these different outlets, such that when you need the favor of like, oh, hey, we're about to launch or we got this big thing, you can hit up your people and say, hey, I've got something for you, because you have a relationship and you've spent the time and the investment in making them relationship, which means you are also giving to them. You are giving them a source. You were saying, hey, saw your article on this and I shared it. Or, you were helping them. That's how you build a relationship. It's not all about just give me everything I want. That's a transactional situation.
Is that a major problem in your industry?
That's a problem.
Like the majority of people are just asking for favors and not building those relationships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And is that why you think you and your company can be, is that your unique qualifier that makes you different?
That's one of them. The way you can get away with kind of the favor or just like the coverage out the bat is if you have a fantastic client doing a fantastic thing that is so perfect of a fit for this writer that they go, oh, that's exactly what I want to hear about.
You provided value to that person.
Exactly.
Though, right?
Maybe you plated it up so that you gave them, the 2 quotes and the expert and the story and the data, and you can like plate it up. So there's that. But how many situations do you get like that? Maybe less than you'd like. So if you have a relationship, you're going to be able to maybe get feedback from them. We just are doing this with the client right now. And so our contacts are coming back and saying, hey, no, I'm not interested, but here's why, because I need this and this. Hey, I need that element and this. And then I could get it. Then we can give that back to the client and say, hey, there's not enough meat in this piece right now, but if we plated up A and B, we can go back to them. So that's what relationships will also tell you is what would be sellable.
Right. They want to help you.
Exactly. Instead of just no response.
Interesting.
And you'll get no response if you have no relationship.
And what have you seen to be the most efficient? Because I'm assuming with these relationships, you want to make their life as easy as possible. So not only are you giving them a great story that they would really geek out over and dig, but I'm sure you're doing a lot of the legwork. Like, here's the breakdown, bullet point by bullet point, of all the facts and all the things that you may find interesting. I'm just interested in how you package that up.
Oh, yeah.
And how you make their life easier.
You do not send a 17-paragraph pitch. These are some of the busiest people there are.
And they're checking on their phone, too, so they can only scroll so much.
Phone, they're doing all this stuff. We actually have a startup that I won't mention here, but is solving part of this with a pitch platform where they're getting curated content to their inbox, because this is a big problem. They're inundated with all these email pitches. Typically, email is the number one source that they use, over 80%, 90% even in some research and estimates, that they're receiving pitches. So it needs to be short and sweet and well packaged, bullet points, no more than 10 sentences.
Is that still like 100% of your outreach with your relationships is still email, or
not 100, because still the in-persons help.
Okay.
Some of them even prefer, they'll do DMs, they'll do that.
That's interesting.
They do that.
So you might say, like, here's a link out to more information, and you kind of package that up for them. Okay.
Maybe you're friends with them on Facebook, something like that, or on Instagram or whatever. So there's that. If you have a relationship, that's going to be
I
more
was thinking of you.
The case.
I think this would be super interesting for your publication.
Saw your photo of your dog, that type of thing. That stuff works.
Yeah. So when you do actually package this stuff up, I mean, and this may be an ignorant question, but you're not writing the article for said person. You're just giving them. That's probably a big no, it's like you're not going to write it for them. But
unless it's a byline content, which they play. So you'll see sometimes contributed content on certain tech outlets, let's say, but you need to know if they accept contributed content or byline content. Otherwise, you're plating up the information such that they can go, great, Now I'm going to go write that story. Or great, I want to talk to those 3 people. Set me up. Something like that.
And how can you set it up? Like, is it just a basic who, what, when, where, why with bullet points that are super easy to read and keep it under a sentence so they get the deal of the story? Or like, I guess I'm more fascinated with how you, the recipe that works the best for your different relationships.
It all kind of depends because they're all different. But terseness is best because then they can respond and say, oh, I want to have more information, or oh, I want to get on a call with the founder or something.
Interesting. So ask before you say, here's all the stuff you want to know.
Oh, never just give them all of it.
Gotcha.
No. Now, some though that you will then talk to are like, if you don't send me everything, then it
Everybody's
depends.
a little bit different.
So it helps to know.
But that's a
what
good
their
answer. It
preferences
depends.
are. It helps to know. But brevity is usually the better course.
There's never a one size fits all approach.
No, there's not, because you're dealing with humans. Back to humans. You're dealing with humans who all have preferences.
I want to get just a little personal too. So born and raised in SD. I think you said you've been to more than 60 countries.
Yeah, I think it's more at this point.
How has that shaped kind of your storytelling and the narratives that you tell, and maybe your relationships with your clients or your relationships with people on the media side? I'm wondering if you feel like that's shaped you in a certain way.
It defines for me that storytelling is universal. It is all across humanity. We've been telling stories as long as we've been around fires. So that's never going away. How we tell stories, of course, will change. This is a form of storytelling. Right. Twitter is a form of storytelling. Media. So it's going to change and evolve. But as a human component, it's never going to go away. And I think with the more places I go to, you yet again find that this is true. We all tell stories. We tell stories to younger generations. Yeah. We tell stories amongst each other. We share in a way that's storytelling. So this is a absolutely humankind thing.
Yep.
You cannot escape that. So that's what it reminds me of that. And then I think secondly, that for clients, and we have a number of international clients, there are some things and cultural norms that different countries happen to have. There's a tech norm too, the Silicon Valley type of norm. Yeah. So you start to realize that, yes, there are differences amongst all different types of people and businesses and such that you should pay attention to if you want this to work. So I think it's a good reminder too of like, there are customs and norms that every type of culture, whether that be an ethnic one or a business one, pertain to.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I think this my industry, when it comes to social entertainment, sports, there's a little bit of a freak out mode because of the transition from linear to OTT. And what I always kind of go back to is there was a time where everybody got their information and stories from radio. Yeah. And there was this new evolution or this revolution of the television. And that became what everybody used. Now we're just going through a different revolution, which is the mobile device. Yeah. And using our platforms and using Google Home and all these different things. But the content doesn't change. The storytelling doesn't really change. No. It's just a different platform.
It's just all different.
So platforms. Email is different. You used to maybe fax somebody a PPR story, or you would write
this is what I've
letter.
Heard.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But you're still doing the same storytelling, the same type of business relationships. We're using different platforms. And there's going to be a lot of different ones in 20 years too, but we're going to still probably use the same philosophies.
We'll still be telling stories.
Well, I love it. Well, tell us more about how people can find out more about you and what you're currently working on.
Sure. So our PR firm's website is BAM Communications with an S on the end, .biz, B-I-Z. And then my personal website is beckbamberger.com.
I really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we'll have more over.
Dave.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being.
All right. So there it was, Beck Bamberger. She's the founder of BAM Communications. And I think the conversation was super helpful. I mean, I really do think most of our listeners, and talking about the business of social and sports and entertainment, the main question is earned media value. And also with all the different events and different things that are going on with your brand, how are you able to leverage that with positive PR? And I really like what she said at the end of the day. All the questions really came back to relationships. If you're always asking for favors and trying to flood people, kind of the spray and pray approach, it's not going to work. So finding ways to have a plan, not only for what we talked a little bit about there, crisis aversion and risk management, but also when it comes to all the great things you're doing to get more positive awareness out of there. Because at the end of the day, it builds more credibility, and it's not you just talking about yourself and being in sales mode. It's really others talking about you in a positive light. So thought the conversation was super interesting. We really want to always provide value when it comes to the business of social. We'll see you next episode.